Yeah, welcome to Icons Talk with Clarence R. Wallace, your forum for positive and uplifting conversation. This topic is dear to my heart because, as you know, we have a social initiative, and our desire is that we can all bring more enlightenment, help and assistance to the mental health field. There's still great stigma attached to it, and there are a lot of people that are confused about what mental health is. So I have, oh my goodness, I'm so honored to have Shanique Victoria Edwards with us today. She's an expert in her field, and I'll let her tell you a bit more about herself because she knows herself best. So Shanique, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Welcome. Pleasure. So go tell the people about yourself.
Well, my name is Shanique Victoria. I am a psychotherapist in private practice. I'm also a knowledge translation specialist with the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. I work as a mental health consultant with Black Mental Health Canada, and I'm also the Director of Mental Health Strategy and Outreach with the Canadian Black Nurses Alliance.
Wow. More than capable to do this interview. I'm telling you, she comes with a wealth of knowledge, and I know that you will not be disappointed by listening to us. Please leave a like and a subscribe. And I also want to say to you, I've never done this before. I see some people calling me pastor on this thing. I don't know how I became a pastor. However, it's an honor. I receive it. But I want you all to also know that it's taken a lot for us to do this work. And I have a young man that's assisting me that's not getting the pay that he deserves. So if you ever want to contribute to us, please, when we release the book, you order a book. If you can contribute something that you want to be an angel donor to this work, I embrace it, because guess what? You're going to be helping a lot of other people get some information that they need. So without any further ado, I'm going to get into this program. Again, Shanique, thank you so much again for coming. So here we're going to get into the first question, Shanique. So my question for you is this. Could you share with us how your background in neuroscience, psychology, and clinical counseling has influenced your journey in advocating for mental health and racial equality?
I've always had a really keen interest in how the brain works, but also how it influences behavior. And this proverbial question that we often ask in the science field, what comes first, chicken or the egg, nature versus nurture. And from that perspective, I really began to realize that within our community, I utilize the word community, meaning the Black community, there really wasn't a lot of space to have those difficult conversations about mental health, mental wellness, healing, thriving. And a part of that has to do with just the fact that for many of us, we are in that survival mode, that perpetual get up, work, take care of our family perspective. However, I wanted it to be a bit different. I wanted to see a generation of young Black people who were leading and thriving in their lives. And so intersecting between neuroscience and psychology really birthed in me a passion to see a whole generation of people who are living differently. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, because it's about seeing challenges, something that interests you, but you also see that it could be of benefit to others as well.
Absolutely.
And that's why you've been in this field.
Absolutely.
So what inspired you to focus on supporting research activities at CAMH and advocating for the mental health needs of BIPOC communities? Now, when we say BIPOC, we're talking about Black, Indigenous, people of color. That's what it means. So you want to expound on that a bit for me, please?
Absolutely. And I would also preface what I'm saying by my research interests go outside of CAMH as well.
Yes.
However, to be honest, I see that it's an underserved community. A lot of our resources are not focused on the needs of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. As well, I would say that the services that are available are not tailored, they're not safe, they're not culturally affirming. They take on very Eurocentric lenses that don't help our people to heal and to thrive. And for that reason, I think there needs to be more advocacy for policies, for systems, for resources. When I say resources, I mean financial resources to allow for the sustainability of services that are actually useful for our people, to get us to a place where we're able to combat some of the societal and institutional barriers that we face on a daily basis.
I agree with you, because there, in this regard, you find that there's ignorance on both sides. There's ignorance within our community as to what mental health issues are and how they address it, and their ignorance in those who try to help us because they don't see through our lenses. I'm not saying what they're doing isn't good, but many times they're putting a Band-Aid on something that is not really getting at the source.
Absolutely.
It's like, you're doing something, but the thing is to find us, get to the source. It's like you're trying to fix something your tire have a problem. You don't go to the hood to try and fix it. You go to the tire. You know what I'm saying? And so you find that people are just misdiagnosing stuff and also treating people differently based upon their background and their experiences because they don't live that experience. They don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing some clarity to that. So Shanique, can you delve into the concept of racial trauma and its impact on mental health, particularly within BIPOC individuals?
Yeah, racial trauma comes in different forms.
Yes.
A part of it is the microaggressions that we hear a lot popularized to date, but it's also the little interactions that you might have, for example, going to the grocery store or the shopping mall and being followed around.
Yes.
It's the gaslighting when you tell somebody that what they're doing is actually racist.
Yes.
It's also the trauma porn that comes from just seeing it in the media perpetually. It happened a lot during the death of George Floyd, where it was replayed over and over and over. And when you think about Black people who've had maybe those experiences, maybe they had a family member who died that way, or they also may have been in a community where violence of that nature was common. It causes trauma, vicarious trauma, and secondary trauma as well.
It's true.
And so, we talk about it in this field as almost like death by 1,000 paper cuts. We think sometimes just that one traumatic injury, that one racial encounter is just one thing. But when you think about the lifespan and that you're continuously having to encounter going to the emergency room and being discounted for your symptoms or being treated differently because of your symptoms, simply because of the color of your skin, also going through the education system and the barriers that are there, it's just countless, and they mount upon one another that over time, re-injuring that paper cut, eventually you can lose a lot of blood, which can end, your life. And so when we think about what is that impact on Black and people of color, the impact is vast. For some people, it's the physical challenges that come up, whether it be hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. It's countless. Autoimmune disorders, things that are quite prevalent within our community, but it's also some of the mental health challenges as well. It's the depression, anxiety, the hypervigilance.
Yes.
When you think about young Black men having to have interactions with police, for example, and just because of the way in which oftentimes we are racially socialized, this is not to say that this is everybody's experience, but for many people who have young Black male children, they do have that difficult conversation of this is what you do when you're pulled over by police. This is how you're to interact. And for that reason, there may just be that hypervigilance that happens. And when we think about it on a physiological perspective, that's releasing a lot of stress hormone.
Absolutely.
That may couple that with whatever stress you may just have in your life in general. That perpetual stress leads to ongoing challenges, as well as one of the things that we don't, I think, talk about as much is internalized racism. How we then look inward and we begin to dislike ourselves. We hate the color of our skin. We hate our hair color. We wish we were lighter. This has translated into many different cultural groups in the sense of, for example, bleaching. That's the impact of internalized racism. And these messages end up getting passed down, even down to how, for example, Black women wear their hair and how back in the day, people were perming their hair because there was this preoccupation of straight hair and not loving our hair. And again, that messaging gets translated down the generations. And so the impact is quite vast and it's quite far. And to say like it's one thing, one diagnosable thing, I think is where we do complex. A disservice.
Yes. That was beautifully said. I mean, she gave us a psychology lesson, a physiological lesson. I mean, a pathophysiology. There's a whole pack. I'm telling you, this woman is loaded. But it's so true because we all know, we're talking about chronic situations here. Some people go through trauma just once.
Yes.
But the trauma that repeatedly you're exposed to. You haven't watched the program we did on The Flames of Fire, which we did with Captain Brian Agard, and he shared his experience with officers, and his lived experience wasn't mine. He had several run-ins where they tried to even bait him into a fight. My son actually got beaten up by Durham police officers because someone told them that he was playing with his friends. And as a result, the person observing it thought that he was fighting, and they were just playing, horse playing, when he was in university. So that was my son's experience. My experience, I've never had problems with the cops. They've always treated me respectfully. But that does not deny the fact that others have been through these things.
Yes.
And that's what we have in our society sometimes. They try to say, well, that's not my experience. Oh, we're getting so far ahead. But that's not the truth. That's not the truth for everyone. So thank you for raising that point, because we do need more people to advocate on our behalf, because we're all connected. I don't matter if you're a black person, a white person, I don't matter what color you are. We are connected. So if one part of the family hurts, you're hurting. So this is all our issue. We're talking about, yes, what happens within the black community, but trust me, we're all impacted by it. The cost for healthcare, those other costs that you don't see, we're all paying for it. So let's live together. Let's try and address these issues. Let's take the stigma off and let's move on. From your experience, what therapeutic approaches have you found effective in addressing the impact of systemic racism and oppression to achieve institutional change and racial equity?
Very loaded question.
It is.
And I will say, I don't feel that I am. I know you started the segment by saying that I'm an expert, but I think I'm a lifelong student. I'll put that out there. Yeah. However, I think it's a combination of things. You have to be willing to integrate various different modalities into one to really and truly get to what is that unique individual, what is it that they need. One of the things I will say is, not that we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some elements of Eurocentric, evidence-based modalities that are effective.
Absolutely.
However, we have to recognize the lens from which we're utilizing them. So to tell somebody, for example, if we were to utilize cognitive behavioral therapy as an example of, okay, just think away or reframe the way that you're thinking about your experiences. That doesn't work for the reality of a person who has to go out every day and interact with a system that is founded in anti-Black racism, right? And all of our institutions in Canada, all of our major systems, all are rooted in colonialism and anti-Black racism. So that type of way of approaching therapy from a very traditional model, I would say does a disservice. However, there are Afrocentric lenses and cultural lenses that we can put on various different modalities that I think would be quite effective. And there have been many narrative-based therapies that have actually originated from great Black therapists that work really, really good, such as, narratives in your suitcase, as well as other different modalities, such as the Tree of Life, which is more of a narrative-based way of, let's retell the story. We've been told a certain story about who we are, our history, what we're good at, what we're not good at, what it means to be Black. Let's rework that story in one that is empowering, uplifting, one that you can confidently stand in, so that when you are facing some of these assaults and racial experiences or just life experiences, you feel that you have the capacity to do so. So I would say a lot of different modalities are out there, but I don't think there's a one size fits all.
I agree. It's like just having tools in your toolbox, right?
Exactly.
You can't use one. I agree with you 100%, right? One of the things I look at in terms of what you just explained, I'll give you an example that I actually experienced. Actually, the guy looked at me once and he thought it was a compliment. He said to me that I'm a white man in a Black body. And really what he meant, it was, as a Black man, I should not have an intelligence. And you see, look at what the lens that they're looking for. How are they going to help me if they already see that I am less than? Right? And that's the problem, some of the barriers that we got to deal with. Now, if I was a strong person in myself, you know how many times I would have been broken? So why am I doing, this is the reason why I'm also doing this program, because I realize there's a lot of broken people and they have no one to stand for them. And a lot of people suffer because they're lacking the knowledge of who they are. They're like paupers and they're kings. It's like the prodigal son who left home. He was still wealthy, but he was eating out of a pig's pen. Many of us are eating out of a pig's pen of what people are providing for us because we have no understanding of who we are. The moment, my brothers and sisters, including of all races, the moment you understand your value and your worth, it's the moment you rise. If you depend on others to put a value on you, you will be devalued. I tell you that much. So I want you to stand. I know it's tough, but find people who will encourage you and find the strength and resilience within yourself to value yourself more than anyone else values you. Because no one will value you the way you value yourself, except God. All right, let me move on. Thanks for addressing that issue. I just had to say that, We're just having a conversation, people. We're being real. We're not fake. I mean, we don't care. I do care, but what I mean is, it's just life, man. We're just having a conversation. Let's move on. Shanique, could you provide insights from your experience conducting mental health workshops for various organizations, particularly regarding the response from participants? Should I repeat that? Is it?
Yes, one more time.
Yeah, let me repeat that. I think so. There was a little bit of a... Okay, so Shanique, could you provide insights from your experience conducting mental health workshops for various organizations, particularly regarding the response from the participants?
When I'm working with Black or people of color who participate in my workshops, for many of them, to be honest, it's almost that sigh of like, finally, we're talking about this. This has been my lifelong experience. There has not been outlets necessarily where people who have position, have power, have privilege, now are being open to or realizing how maybe whether they themselves actively participate in some of these practices, or how they just stay on the sidelines and don't jump in when they have an opportunity to make a difference, and how it ultimately is impacting them. And so I've heard for many too, is also putting some language to what it is that they're experiencing, because that's a part of, as you mentioned before, that ignorance piece on both sides. Is that for many of us, we don't have that language about how we're feeling, or even able to tap into some of that emotional language, much less do that emotional processing.
That's right. That's right.
And so for some, it's that balance of, okay, finally we're being heard. Finally we're being seen. Finally there are now opportunities for my coworkers, for people who I may collaborate with, to begin to understand how maybe the things that they take for granted have such a negative impact on me. I would say on the flip side too, I think the response that I've had from Caucasian people who take some of the workshops that I take or that I conduct has also equally been positive. I think people are open to learning.
Absolutely.
And people are open to growing. I think it's, again, just creating those forums where we can do that, and also recognizing too that it's not just on Black people. It's not just on BIPOC communities to do this heavy lifting. We need our allies.
Absolutely.
We need people who are willing, and I use the word allies very loosely because I know there's so much connotation to that. However, it is important that we are coming together. We're partnering together because at the end of the day, it's quite simple. You know, we treat people the way we want to be treated.
Simple.
And it's interesting how we intellectualize it sometimes when honestly it's just foundational.
So simple.
Yeah.
So simple. And we all benefit so much.
Absolutely.
It doesn't take much to be kind, does it?
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
But a lot of people put more energy into being mean than being kind. It's so crazy. I mean, you know, sometimes people say, well, it's a positive. But I tell you what, just like there's light, there's darkness. We got to understand both sides to be able to appreciate the difference and what difference we can make.
Exactly.
You know, it's funny because you mentioned a number of things that really resonates with me. I consider myself a professional student because the moment I have a quote that I wrote: "We don't know what we don't know." You know why?
That's true.
Because we don't know that we don't know what we don't know until we do know what we didn't know. Now we do know, and unfortunately, some folks just never know. As Jamaicans would say, "You don't know." You know what I mean? But this is truth, though, right? So we keep on learning, and when we learn things, we develop, and we can change the narrative. We can change our skills. But if we don't expose ourselves to new knowledge and new information, then where are we going? I mean, as I mentioned, it's like using a typewriter. To actually imagine using a typewriter to do this. You know how long it would take for me to type the questions and everything and to get all that? Maybe coffee would spill. I remember back in the day, you write a paper and coffee spill on it, or the dog eats your paper. I mean, you have nowhere to store it. You have the cloud to store it. Now you don't lose it. So we're living in a generation where things are so much better and different. But one other thing I want to say, because as you said it reminded me of my friend, Ryan, that was on the program previously. And what he said, he actually is a firefighter, right? Been in fire services here in Brampton for almost 30 years. Oh. The interesting thing is, when he got the job, he was out, I forgot where he was, but training camp or whatever. And he and some other Caucasian friends who got the job, they were running, right? Then here comes a cop with the sirens going, and his friends, the Caucasians one, guess what they did? They ran towards the cops. You know where he was running? Away from the cops. So you see, it depends on the lens in which you see it. To him, it's traumatic. They were only doing their job. They wanted to celebrate the fact that but It's true. And that's the reason why we can't have people who don't live our lives trying to tell us how to live it. Please, people, listen to us. Anyhow, let me move on.
And I would also add there too, the source is so important.
Yes.
We talk about what we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
The source of the knowledge that we're getting is so important. And I think when we look at a lot of our training programs, we look at a lot of the ways in which information is disseminated. It's again through that very Eurocentric lens that doesn't create space and room to look at Black, Indigenous, other cultural groups, and other marginalized groups, their frame of reference.
So very good, very good, very good. Thank you so much. All right, so in your opinion, another question for you. As an advocate for BIPOC mental health needs, what are some key challenges you've observed in addressing systemic racism and oppression in mental health care? And how do you believe these challenges can be addressed?
A very multifaceted question. A part of it is access. That's one of the number one issues. One of the things that I hear a lot of times when I'm in different spaces is, where can I go to find Black therapists? And there's a lot of different resources out there. There are a lot of websites now that have directories of where you can find them. But at the same time, our population is quite small in the grand scheme of the amount of people who need support and help. I would also say in terms of access it's the cost. For many people that I know working in this field, we offer subsidized scales for the main reason that we don't want finances to be an impediment to getting access to services. But in the end, for some people who, for example, that might be their full-time job, is their private practice, that them cutting their fees is, they also have to make a living, right? And so some things like that, I think, need to be addressed, whether there are greater subsidies out there, more access to therapists in organizations that can offer low-cost therapy. I would also say that opening up the doors to what, for example, psychotherapy looks like. Oftentimes we keep it quite siloed to, for example, social workers. We don't give too much room and credence, even though I think it is changing nowadays and we are expanding a little bit, but it is slow. Progress is so slow. But opening up the door, for example, for psychotherapists to be able to come in and do some of this so that we're alleviating some of the burden from our colleagues. There are many other professional organizations and groups that do therapy that could potentially be beneficial. And I think as well, opening up the door to how can community support? How can we, for example, bring more mental health access and services to faith-based organizations or community organizations that serve certain populations, for example, Jamaican associations or other African associations or whatever associations are associated with other cultural groups. I think, and providing some of that training would be great. I think in the schools for sure, having some of these conversations in the school, again, from a lens that is culturally relevant to the demographics that we are serving. Further to that, I would also say that there needs to be some acknowledgement to how healthcare in general has wounded Black communities. And I say healthcare in general because oftentimes we silo off mental health from physical health, and it's all the healthcare system. So if you go into the emergency room because you were having some type of pain and you were discriminated against, how likely are you to then go and access mental health resources from the same system that you felt wronged or you've had a traumatic experience with? You're not. And so from that, we do need to acknowledge, and I think it's happening. Various levels of government are acknowledging anti-Black racism. They're putting it in their mandates to address and dismantle anti-Black racism. But I also think it's important that we also have calls to action. We can't just put these things in these mandates and we're not doing anything, putting our money behind it, putting resources behind it, making it a priority. We saw that after the death of George Floyd and COVID, there was that period of priority for Black mental health. And that was great. We appreciated that. But now that we're 4 years out of the pandemic, where is the sustainability of these resources? And so when you give us a little bit of the fruit and then you keep pulling it away, again, how do we trust the next time when we need support? And further to that, I would also say is education within our community, recognizing, what are the resources that are out there? How do we support loved ones before they get to a place of, for example, having an episode of psychosis, which then means that we have to call the police because we have no other options. So if we can start to focus on prevention, and that's the social determinants of health piece,
Right.
but also early intervention.
Yes.
How can we to the services they need early before they start utilizing other coping strategies that may just augment their mental health symptoms. Sorry.
Thank you. You said a whole lot right there. And as you were speaking, it reminded me, not very long ago, maybe, I don't even know if it's 3 years ago, probably was during the COVID time, but there was a young man, not from where I'm living, maybe about 10 minutes drive from where I'm living. And he had a mental health issue and his parents called the cops. And that's one of the calls that they regretted, because he was ended up being killed as a result of his mental illness. So we're having some serious problems in terms of understanding how do we deal with these issues. And that's why it's a problem, because not only it's a very serious problem in the fact that not only the black community is impacted, even people that are Caucasian, there's still a stigma attached.
Oh,
so
yeah.
imagine people of color, the greater stigma that's attached to that. Because I'm just being real. A lot of people still not see us through the same lens that they see another person. Unfortunately, So, thanks for your response on that. And another thing I could say, I know some of you are watching who can do more than just watching. I want you to put some action to it, because, as I said, my initiative is to be able to support mental health, to get the stigma off. So I want you to support Shanique's organization. We're going to talk about how you can do that and how you can support what we're doing, because what we're doing, this is very near and dear to my heart in terms of this mental health disease. Because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real. I mean, right now, you don't see my words, but the words are real. You're breathing in oxygen. You don't see it, but it's real. So I don't want you to despise something or deny something because you're not aware of it. Okay? Next question. Let's move on. Okay, so in your opinion, what are some effective therapeutic approaches for addressing the impact of systemic racism on fostering institutional change and racial equity in mental health care? Because I just mentioned about what happened to the young man.
I think it requires a top-down approach. I think we do need to engage governments, for example, because they're the ones who design the policies. They're the ones who determine funding. They're the ones who determine what services are going to be provided and when. And so we definitely do need to see more engagement, I would say, from federal, provincial, municipal governments to really and truly champion some of these services. There are great organizations that are doing great work out there, are ready to service our communities, but they're constantly having to grasp at straws or deal with burnout themselves.
Yes.
Again, this community that serves specifically Black populations is quite small. And so they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting without a lot of reward, respect, or even support. And I think, again, when we think about how does this now impact the next generation, sustainability is key. And so how do we advocate and engage with governments, for example, to ensure that as we transition between governments, that certain services are not being left into the gap and that we are able to see a sustainability of these services?
I agree with you 100%. 100% that we need more sustainability. And that's why I'm asking for grassroots people. Trust me, I remember when Barack Obama became president. It was a lot of grassroots people doing what they can. I don't want you to think that your $20 don't matter. I don't care if you have 1,000. Some of you may have $1 million that you want to offer to make this thing happen, because we need people. And people have the heart of doing these things, but there's over expense involved. So we can't provide the service you need for free, right? I mean, Shanique went to school for years to learn, and she's still learning. So we really want, and we're calling out for government. I mean, we don't care what stripes you wear. Jagmeet, if you're listening, I need you on my program, not because of necessarily political reason, but I admire what you do in terms of the things that you had to overcome to become, the leader of the NDP party. I know you had a lot of challenges, my brother. I want to see you on my program to discuss these matters. And, because you're a Bramptonian as well. So anyhow, that's my little piece. But help us out, okay? So next question. How do you see the intersection of mental health and racial equality evolving in the future? And what steps do you believe are necessary to create more inclusive and supportive environments for BIPOC individuals?
I think from this perspective, it is going back to that idea that we don't know what we don't know. And so being open to training, even within myself, I identify as a Black woman of West Indian descent. However, I don't have or speak to the experiences of all Black women of West Indian descent.
That's right.
And so even if, for example, I do have a client who similar backgrounds, maybe even similar experiences, I still will need to ensure that I am equipped to be able to attend to their unique needs. And so from that perspective, the intersection here is that when we are able to engage in more learning, more training, as well as being curious about, okay, how does this impact that? And oftentimes within the therapeutic space, we don't open up conversations about race. We don't open up conversations about culture and how they impact mental health. And I think that does a disservice to many populations, especially Black communities, where you cannot separate that. No. We cannot separate the fact that we are a Black person operating in a world or operating in a society that is steeped in anti-Black racism. So that I'm bringing that into the space as well. And so in that training is becoming comfortable with our own biases, becoming comfortable with our own prejudices, understanding them, and then understanding the work that we need to do in order to maybe relearn some things, unlearn some things, expand upon some of our learning so that we can be in this space where we are also evolving and growing and mirroring that to future generations as well, that we don't have all the answers and being honest about that. I'm not an expert. I don't have all the answers. I can only give my humble opinion based on my experience and my training to date. However, there's people before me, elders such as yourself, who've gone through more and experienced other things that have wisdom to impart. So how do we bring that all to the table and design a meal, if we were to utilize an analogy, but design a meal that serves the unique individual needs of the people who are sitting at the table.
So beautifully said. So beautifully said. Absolutely. I agree with you 100% in what you're saying because, it's not a one size fit all. And we definitely need all at the table to be able to bring their experiences together. And as you rightfully said, I like that you're using, you don't know what you don't know, because one of my favorite quotes. Because it's true, though. The moment you think you know everything, it's the moment you stop growing.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And then pride comes in as well. So what keeps us humble is to realize we don't know everything. Like this set, I remodeled it. Why? Because it wasn't the way it's supposed. And I may do something else different. I don't know. But the fact is, you do something. And that's one of the problems sometimes. People don't get started doing what they're doing. So in regards to your mental health, do something. Talk to someone. Find out what's going on, because that will be a part of a solution. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to have a few more questions, and we're going to wrap this up. Can you share any upcoming projects or initiative you're working on to further advance BIPOC mental health awareness and support?
I always have a lot of things going on, so I would definitely say follow me on Instagram or look at my website. There's so much information there. Yeah, my Instagram is at Shanique_Victoria, and my website is ShaniqueVictoria.com. So pretty easy to find me. But I would say, I'm constantly getting involved with organizations who are looking to do training. So any type of anti-Black racism training, racial trauma training, looking at post-traumatic growth and resilience as ways of fostering healing in Black communities. I also do some work with students and children as well. And I think also following some of the organizations that I am affiliated with, such as Black Mental Health Canada, they have a ton of different programming that they do. They offer a lot of groups and various different services. They also have a directory of therapists as well. So that would be one of the resources that you can look at if you want to know where you can find a Black therapist, as well as Healing in Color is another one that offers a directory for Black therapists as well. I would also say looking at the Canadian Black Nurses Alliance if you are a member of the nursing community as well, whether you are domestically or internationally trained. We offer support and resources for Black nurses nationally, because there's a ton of different things happening through those various different channels.
Awesome. Thank you. And lastly, how can individuals, organizations, and communities contribute to promoting mental health, resilience, and racial equality? And how can they support the work of organizations like Black Mental Health Canada?
I mean, there's many different ways to help. I don't think one form of support outweighs another. Absolutely, finances are needed to make the wheels run.
Yep.
So if you are in that position and you're able to do that, and that's something you feel led to do and you
Right.
feel passionate about it, absolutely. But I think as well, lived experience, being able to tell and share your stories can be so impactful.
Yes.
We historically, as a community, we grew and we found our framing in life based on the stories of our elders.
Yes.
They're the ones who transmitted their narratives so that we can carry them on, their proverbs, all
Yes.
of those different things. That when it comes to the mental health spaces, being willing and having that courage, recognizing that it takes courage to be vulnerable and share your stories, but how impactful when you can hear somebody who looks like me, who is from my background, talk about openly their struggles and the
Yes.
things that they've gone through and how they received help. So don't think that your story is too small. And if you have different platforms like you yourself have, and you're utilizing this platform to bring about this conversation, to utilize those platforms to share that information. And then from there, helping somebody. If you know somebody who's having a hard time, I do mental health first aid training, for example.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So for people who may want
about that.
to
We'll talk
become
about that.
more trained on how do I recognize the signs, the symptoms, how do I have these difficult conversations? What can that look like? You can get actual training the same way we would do training for CPR, right? We do need to have some training on how do we attend to mental health in our community as well.
It's interesting because I do offer CPR training, and what you're saying is very, as you said, I just think about, definitely we need to do some kind of workshop on that, because if people are aware of this and can have early intervention for their families,
Absolutely.
just like you would in first aid,
Absolutely.
that could be a big difference in someone's
Absolutely.
life. And as you said that, it just triggered to me. I would tell your audience, listen, don't ever take your story that it cannot change a person's life. I'm going to say this and then we'll wrap this session up. I remember I was teaching a group of young men, and they work in the construction industry. And I was teaching them I had them for about 2 weeks of various different classes. I had to, different subject matters that we had to go through. I had to share my story about when I went back to school, and the fact that at the time it didn't seem like it made sense. At the age, all the things that were happening didn't make sense. I shared that earlier. So someone, if you go back and watch the first episode we did, I spoke about that. But what I'm saying is this, that when I shared the story regarding my going back to school, a young man, I said, construction work, it pays well. But if you have a dream, don't ever think it's too late for you to fulfill your dream. And believe it, the guy came back to me. At lunch, he came to me and he said, Clarence, I have registered to go back to school to finish my degree in engineering.
Amazing.
I wish I'd kept in touch with him.
Amazing.
Right? So you never know how your story may impact someone. So don't think that your story doesn't matter. The mantra I live by is positively influencing the life of one to impact the life of many. Because you don't know, by you changing the trajectory of someone's life, this guy become an engineer. Now he has the income to now take care of his family, do a lot more, make a bigger difference in the community. It's just just one simple thing can change a whole generation.
It is true.
So Shanique, I thank you so much for coming to Icons Talk to talk to us. I wish you audience that it really, as we said, it's a positive forum for positive and uplifting conversation. But our goal is to brighten your day and to empower your spirit. I hope you feel empowered, because I feel empowered just listening to Shanique. We're going to have Shanique back again. We have several topics, so look out for Shanique. She is an awesome, I'm telling you, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for watching Icons Talk. Tune in. Leave a like and a subscribe. Tell us if you want more of these topics to be discussed. If you can help out, tell us how you can help out. Because again, as Shanique said, it's not always about the dollars. You may be able to volunteer your time. By the way, Shanique, I wanted to talk about, do you have green ribbons for mental health?
Green ribbons?
Yeah.
I
think they have that in the state. You know what? I'm going to start an initiative, because when is Mental Health Month? Week or month? When is it?
Mental Health Week just passed.
Well, it's the month of May too.
It's the month of May
is mental health.
Mental Health Week just passed. Yeah.
Okay, so watch this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take initiative on this. I want us to start getting some green ribbons, just like we have for like different causes. Pink for cancer. I want to start getting that, and like you have the poppy for Poppy Days. I want May to become a day where people purchase a green ribbon, and that contribution go to mental health, to your organization. That's my initiative. Okay? Tim Hortons, if you're listening, be a part of this. Okay? All right. Thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you so much
Have a
for
great
having
one.
me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'm off. This one is right focus. So with all my guests, I offer them one of the quote that I wrote. This one, I'm going to let Shanique actually read it. You can read it and then show it to them, and then I'll give you my auto after that.
It says, don't focus on where you are. Focus on where you intend to go. Like a river, you will flow, getting where you want to go.
We're flowing. Bye, you all.